Hey guys, it's Ross going on the Space Couch. Today I'm going to be reviewing this, Gideon Smith and the Mechanical Girl by David Barnett. Now, Gideon is the son of a fisherman growing up in Whitby. But for years, ever since he was a small child, he's yearned for adventure, you know. Namely through the antics of his hero, Captain Lucian Trigger, and his sidekick, Dr. John Reed. And there's always adventures about them in the newspapers and in books. Now, however, when his father is killed and the fishing boat that he owns is found abandoned, all the crew gone, Gideon feels this could be a case for the captain. Now, while he's in Whitby, he runs into Bram Stoker, who is there looking for inspiration for his next book, you know, and he catches wind of the death of the fishing crew and wants to look into it further. While he is doing that, Stoker runs into Elizabeth Bathory, you know, of ancient history, the one who bathed herself in the blood of virgins, although not this iteration of her. In this version, she is the wife of Dracula, and she is also searching for what killed the crew of the fishing boat, because Castle Dracula was attacked by these same creatures, and her husband, Count Dracula, was killed by these frog-faced mummies from Egypt called the Children of Heket, and she's vowed revenge. She and Stoker form an alliance to track them down and to kill the children. Now, in the meantime, Gideon has set off for London, hoping to convince his hero, Captain Trigger, to investigate the death of his father and the other fishermen. He stops by the house of a Professor Einstein, not that Einstein, but his father, where he meets Maria, and she is a mechanical girl. Kind of a bit like Jax in The Mechanical by Ian Tregillis, but looking more like an actual human. Now, she's very lifelike, Maria, but she also has memories and dreams of another life. It turns out she's got the memories of Annie Crook, who was one of Jack the Ripper's victims, who was in love with the heir to the throne until she was murdered, supposedly by the Ripper, but actually by the British government in this instance. He rescues her from Einstein's caretaker, who's been using her as a sex doll, essentially, because original Annie Crook was a prostitute. She's got the memories, so yes, it's all a bit unseemly. So when they do get to London, Gideon and Maria, they meet up with a newspaper guy who's also been on the Annie Crook case and is constantly getting warned off, like, no good shall come of this, all that sort of thing. However, they get attacked also by the Children of Heket, who want Maria, and their paths then cross with Stoker and Bathory. Maria's been kidnapped and is being taken to Egypt by the frog-faced mummies. Now, when the others locate Captain Trigger, it's quite clear that he's a shell of his former self. It was his lover, John Reed, who actually did all the adventuring, while Lucian stayed at home writing up the stories for publication, kind of like Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson, I guess. Now, it turns out Reed was on the trail also of the Children of Heket, and went to Egypt a year ago, and has not been heard of since. They all decide to go to Egypt by dirigible to try and find out what happened to John, as well as locating and destroying the Children of Heket. Now, while they're travelling to Egypt, they are attacked by the infamous sky pirate Louis Cockaigne, and they're taken prisoner. However, all is not what it seems, and once the Countess has done her whole murdering vampire thing and killed off all the rest of the crew, Cockaigne admits that he was essentially being held prisoner too due to some gambling debts back in Texas. In this universe, different nations from what we have. There's no United States because the British Empire still rules, and it's just a bunch of small failing states south of the Mason-Dixon line. It's very interesting. We'll get into that more in the follow-on books, I expect. Now, once they reach Egypt, they follow Reed's trail to a lost pyramid, where all becomes clear. Maria was abducted because of an ancient artefact that's been placed in her head, is required for a superweapon that would have helped the Egyptians beat the Persians thousands of years ago, but this control mechanism, the thing that's in Maria's head, was lost before it could ever be installed, and it's never been used. Now, she's plugged into this weapon, essentially. It's like a giant brass dragon. I don't know if you recall that old TV show for kids, the cartoon Cities of Gold in the 1980s. That was kind of how I visualised it, that sort of like giant flying bird type of thing. Anyway, this giant brass dragon, flying machine, and while she is plugged in, she's unable to think for herself as Maria. She's totally under the control of whoever, and in this instance, that is John Reed. Now, it escapes the dragon, the pyramid collapses all around them, as you can expect, and Stoker's killed in that collapsing pyramid, trapped in the rubble, but he gives the Countess the last of his blood to help her survive the upcoming struggle. Now, Reed has escaped from the pyramid in the dragon, and he's heading to London, intending to destroy the Empire, Buckingham Palace, the Queen, Parliament, all of that. The others are chasing behind on Cocaine's airship, and they arrive just after the dragon. It must be a pretty fast airship, thinking about it. But there's already been various attacks, you know, some of the Royal, I think it's the Royal Air Force in this instance, its dirigibles have been attacked, various people on the ground have died, all that sort of thing. So, of course, there's then the big boss fight right at the end. Reed and Trigger are killed, Cocaine steals the dragon and Maria, and heads off to Texas to settle his old debts. Wouldn't want to be the one who said, "Give me money," when you're face to face with a brass dragon. Now, in the denouement, after an audience with Queen Victoria, Gideon is now the new hero of the Empire, taking Captain Trigger's role in that. But when he returns to Whitby, it's just too small for him, you know? It's like, how can you be content there when you've seen so much elsewhere? So, new adventures await as he resolves to rescue Maria, who he's actually fallen in love with. Now, these are going to be explored in the sequel, Gideon Smith and the Brass Dragon. Although, no doubt, they're also going to have to deal with the resurrection of Bram Stoker, who turns up at his wife's residence right at the end of the book, but he says, "Oh no, I'm not staying for dinner. I've already eaten." Now, it's a thoroughly enjoyable steampunk romp, start of a promising series. I will be picking up that sequel just as soon as I see it. I don't know how long it is till it's out. So I'm very much looking forward to the other adventures of Gideon Smith, hero of the Empire. Anyway, guys, that's just my review of The Mechanical Girl. Why don't you subscribe to my content if you enjoyed subscribe to my content. Subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed this content. Leave me a comment or a suggestion for a book you'd like to see reviewed, or hit that like button.